You may cut your tail through the way you carry heavy. Loyal to them, but you haven't found the potentials in your God and give you pain. Hard as a bee sting, you're like a bad dream. Do you see what I see? You get scheme. Gave you wealth, knowledge you broke, for all to justify your wicked ways.
Oh, yeah. That is My Wicked Twin. That is their latest installment off their album, Nobody Approved. That is Happily Never After. What a great title for a cool song. I understand that the mastermind behind this, Brent Durner, has a video. Hang on a second. I'm going to just flip over my audio here because I'm still probably I'll get my voice. There we go. That might sound a little bit more fuller. Okay. So that is Brent Durner, My Wicked Twin. That is Happily Never After. We're going to talk about being happily ever after tonight, and we're going to talk about digital music sales and how it relates to social media and back and forth. We're going to talk about networking tonight, and we're going to talk about a little bit about populism tonight. So here's an interesting, spin on things. I found some great articles this week, and I want Sean's comment on these articles. So I'm going to read excerpts from the articles and look for some commentary from Sean on this tonight. And without further ado, my co-host with the most from the East Coast, Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Bantalk. Rim Shots with Sean. Sean, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
How'd you like that intro?
It was, you know what? Brent's tunes, they always remind me of the guy that's got the doll and he's pretty, and he's getting ready to like go out and do something very bad. I love it. So creative. And for a drummer that notices kind of a weird key change where it wouldn't normally go, very, very cool. Very cool.
If they made another Chucky movie, that could be the theme song.
That no question. Any slasher
Happily Never a
right?
slasher movie like a Freddy.
Well,
right?
we gotta talk to Brent, man. He's got a beautiful wife, and he always seems so cranky. But anyway, what a cool tune. I love it.
A Friday the 13th tune for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about like social media tonight, the impact of social media on artists, music from the perspective of digital music sales, and also trending of artist music. I think that's something that is one of those topics that we need to talk about a little bit more, because I think a lot of people have different conceptions about that stuff.
Well, everybody's an expert. We know this, right? Google makes it so, and if it's not on the internet, it's not true. So you're right. I was going to tell you a story later, but I'm going to tell it to you right now because it falls right into this. I opened up this thing on my on Barstools and Bantalk, and the idea is if you subscribe to our channel, I will schedule basically a Zoom call with you, 10 minutes, Tell me what you're looking to do. Tell me what you're having frustrations with. If I can help, I'll connect you with certain people. So I had one today, and it was really cool. It was this guy from Los Angeles who's actually a therapist, and he's got this
I
thing
saw
about
the post on that.
yeah.
That was a great post, man.
Well, and the thing is like I've talked to people about this, and so to have this backup, he's got a thing he calls reservation senseless stupidity (RSS), and he basically says people they're reserved to ask for help. They're dumb and basically they the whole theory is they ask for help, they're going to appear weak. And what ends up happening in all this stuff is people try to go it on their own, and they have no success instead of some success or a lot of success, and it just makes no sense to me why people do that. But yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, they're like the guy you told me about that spent 25 grand on an album and no real marketing plan to get a return on investment.
Well, I think he thinks he does, and I wish him the best because he's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
But what he told me, I was like, okay, like I guess the big thing is that what are you doing that's different than anybody else? And when somebody says, well, it's going to be on all streaming platforms, and you hear the terms algorithm, and people just, I think they get, I don't know, they do the research and they don't understand the one big thing. And I'm getting this from, and it's not because I'm so smart. It's just I've been invited to a lot of seminars. Engagement, and that's the key.
So here's something I want to talk a little bit about. You mentioned that whole business of engagement. Engagement is also about getting things to trend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, I saw a funny one today where I'm sitting there going, my God, this thing gets 1 million views. But I mean, it's like, you don't know what's going to resonate with people. You just don't. And go ahead.
You and I, we get into this analytic conversation now more than ever. And because you've taken a real interest in analytics as
well. Absolutely. Well, and the thing is you and I talked about them, and then
I turned you on to that, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, I guess like I got to get something from you. But the when I got YouTube Studio and I started looking at certain things, it's like you sit there and you go, people are telling you stuff that just isn't factual. It's not based on it's based on other people's opinions, but not based upon what you're doing yourself. Right. And that's the thing that blows me away. It's like, okay, somebody's going to tell me how to build a YouTube channel, and I'm going to go talk because they're really good at burping the alphabet. What are they going to tell me? And that's the thing where people, it's got to be customized, but the engagement piece is the biggest piece, right?
Yeah, it is absolutely for sure. When we talk about things that are happening in the world of digital music, one of the things that I pay attention to, you pay attention to those analytics around your show and how you're trending across YouTube. And you're using YouTube as a model and the analytics off YouTube to help you with your analytics on things like Facebook.
Yeah, Instagram.
And Instagram is one of the tough ones because we were talking about this last week, that Instagram is not one of those platforms that is really super easy for middle-aged people to navigate and figure out how to really, really work Instagram. Instagram is a platform that is primarily, you've got millennials and Gen Zers. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of users on Instagram are Gen Zers and millennials.
But isn't it funny, if you have an issue on Facebook, they put you right over to Instagram to try to resolve it? Because that's what I found out last week when I was having my issue, right?
Yeah, well, who grew up with my kids grew up with cell phones in their hands.
Yep.
Right. So and our kids learned that those cell phones are tools.
Yeah. Well, they're tools. I wouldn't say that they view them as that, though. I view them as they think it's an extension of their body.
I mean? Man, I'm telling you, like my daughter makes some killer Instagram stuff for Lorraine Lewis. Have you ever seen some of her stuff that she does for Lorraine?
Was that her that did the one the other day? It was a reenactment of the Sophia Loren Jane Mansfield picture.
You'll have to ask my daughter about that one. I'm not sure. All I can tell you, all I can tell you is that Nicole goes back and forth with those videos when
Yep.
she makes and she makes killer. I mean, if anybody's looking for some really really killer reels to go on your Instagram account, reach out to me. My daughter is a really great Instagrammer. She completely understands how Instagram works, and she has got results to prove it.
Always selling, Ken. Always selling.
Well, I'm just saying, like she's a freelance, she does some freelance work as well. She's looking for some freelance work, and you know, if you're looking
Well,
for somebody to run your Instagram account, here's a young person who's adept at doing it.
and here's the funny thing. So I had a conversation with somebody else there last week, and I asked them what they were doing, and oh well, basically they told me what they're doing, and I get it. They're doing probably what 99% of everybody's doing is paying for stuff, paying for views, paying for streams, and I made the comment, well, I could have helped you. Well, this is what this guy does for a living. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just a cute Facebook page. This is what I do.
Right.
And I network with people, and the thing that I'm very good at, people might not believe it. I ask a question, I shut up and I listen to the answer, and then I take the information and use it.
So here's an interesting conversation. That this is a conversation between myself and my daughter about my Instagram account for Indie Tunes Records, right? So we had about 1,280 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's taken me years to get that, right? And the first thing my daughter said to me when she started looking at my Instagram account is she goes, you know what? 1,280 followers, but none of them are actively following you. None of them are interacting with your posts. I've gone back over months of your posts, and I'm looking at who's interacting with them. Those are your true followers, Dad. The ones that interact with your posts.
Well, people don't understand that. I did a post for somebody. It wasn't even they didn't even ask me to. I did it.
Yeah.
They had something that was on the go. I
Yep.
did it last Sunday night, and on Tuesday I looked at it and I sent them a text and I said, "You may or may not know this, but your post got to almost 11,000 people."
Yep.
And he was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "I can't tell you what they did because I didn't do it to that extent, but 11,000 people actually opened this post." He was
Yep.
like, "Whoa, that's my point. I just don't post stuff, and you know what I mean. Like I'm not showing you pictures of stuff that I'm having for breakfast and stuff like that. There's a
Right.
method to the madness, and it's you got to get people engaged, or it's a waste of time."
If you want to see something really, really interesting, there's a really cool thing that gets archived on Facebook. So everybody that knows me,
Yeah,
me being Kenny and you're not,
yeah,
watches my weekly reels.
yeah.
And every week I try endeavor to put a reel up about the show, right? Sometimes it's different stuff, but it's mostly oftentimes me talking with our artist music playing in the background, right? So go back and check those reels because my reels are starting to trend across social media. They're coming up in my feed and they're coming up in other people's feeds, and I'm watching the watches go up on reels that I did months ago.
Yep, and that's how it works, man. I don't want to say, oh, we trend all the time, but we trend all the time because we get picked up. Like I just had it yesterday, probably the fastest one ever. We got picked up again on blabbermouth.net, which put us into I think 9 other things. We interviewed the guitar player from Warrant, Joey Allen.
Okay, so here, before you go any further,
Yep.
okay, how do we make that happen on this show so that Blabbermouth picks us up? Because that's what we want. We're more engagement. We're looking for more people to follow what we're doing and talking about this sort of organic approach to independent music.
So Blabbermouth is really funny. They're no different than the guy that feeds raccoons and they pick up on it. What I've found about them is it's got to be a topic du jour, and typically their topic du jour would be like backing tracks or changing tuning for singers,
Right.
or anything by Judas Priest. That's what they do, and so we're to the point with them now where they have somebody. Troll's not the right word. Our stuff goes out and it goes into a pot and people put it out for us and they pick
Right.
up on it. This one
Right.
was posted, and I think they look for it, then they actually watch the podcast and then decide to post it. And what I can tell is they
Right.
watched 5 minutes and posted it anyway because it was up on their site probably 20 minutes after we went live with it.
Right. I'm gonna, here's some interesting stuff. So you and I talk about analytics now, and I was joking about getting you turned on to analytics, but I think it was our conversation about it and your fascination with my knowledge about analytics that I think fueled you to start looking at your own.
Well, I've always worked in sales, right? And I mean, like I've used contact management systems like, sorry, we're going to give some free advertising here, but Salesforce and different things like that. The one thing that always drove me nuts was it always seemed like the accountants were overseeing it and telling salespeople how to try to sell stuff. And
Right.
I love accountants; they're very important people. But what they aren't, what they don't do, they don't understand the creative side sometimes because it's all numbers, right? Column A has
Yep.
to match column B. So
Exactly.
I've never liked those types of things. However, when I see them myself and I understand what they mean and I can manipulate them and use them myself, and I don't have somebody breathing over my shoulder saying, "You got to hit these numbers, you're out of here." It's pretty exciting.
So here's some stats I want to share with you. This is a random artist. It's an artist on our label. And when I talk to you about, when we put artist music out there, our goal as a record label is to get the music in front of as many people as we can,
Yep.
get it resonating with people, and try to get it trending. Okay.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't understand that in today's culture, things have to trend in order to be picked up by everybody at large because there's so much thrown at consumers right now that there are so many choices for consumers to make. It's like, holy shit. It's like information overload.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's we talked to somebody about it a couple of weeks ago. You don't grab the first Boston album and listen to it cut to cut, end to end ever anymore. You go on Spotify, and if you don't like, the first 3 or 4 tunes, you never listen to it again.
Well,
And the
here's
world that we live in now, it's just there's no attention span, zero, none.
so here's an interesting analytic off this random single, right? That the goal was to get it trending. Now the artist's job is to sell their music. The label's job is to get it in front of as many people as they can and get it trending, right?
Really? Because I thought the artist's job was to make the music.
Well, their job is to sell it too because it's their product, right? He
Well,
invested in your
yes.
product. Brian Vollmer's got a great song called Skin in the Game. We're going to play it here one night because it's a great tune and it talks about that whole idea. You got to have some skin in the game.
Well, listen, and I am a musician, and some of my good friends get mad at me, but this whole thing about putting it out there and I'm the I'm the creative artist and you go and sell it for me is nonsense. If you don't care enough about your product getting out there to people, then call it a passion project and be fine with where it ends up. But if you're not doing anything with it and you're getting pissed off because it's not doing something, that's on you. Period.
God, that's hard, man. That's harsh.
Fight me.
Some people go, that's harsh, but you know what? It's the reality, right? And the thing is that here's an example. So we talk about trending. Now, organic growth is what I believe that I become a bit of a specialist at, right?
Mhm.
I'm not an expert, but I believe that I'm a specialist in terms of looking at, how do we find organic growth? Because organic growth is the only thing that sustains you,
Yep.
right? So if you get good organic growth, that's like building this massive base, right? And great pyramids, look at the weight of a pyramid and it sits on a base, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that pyramid, and they stand these thousands of years, right? Millions of years. And these things have been there forever and they're made of stone, yet the base is so strong, it supports them in sand, shifting sand.
Yep. Well, it makes sense, right? I mean,
Right.
and that's technology. That if you think about it, you're going like, how are these people smart like all these years ago? But it's like, no, no, no. They didn't have the internet. They figured it out and they applied it. They didn't sit there and, you know, tell everybody how to do it when they've never done it themselves, right? There's
Right.
tons of failure to get to that point.
Okay, so here's an interesting stat. Last 28 days, okay,
Yep.
this song was streamed 561 times in 28 days,
Yep.
right? It had 501 listeners,
Wow.
right? But here's the biggie. It had 97 saves,
Huh. Interesting.
right? What do you think of those stats?
The big one is the saves. I mean, like, so here's the thing, and it's like, God bless Michael Brandvold. I have to start paying royalties for saying that. But I sat here in this very show one night, and he said, "Stop getting hung up on the views, because it's hard, right?" But when you get back in and you start understanding, I've got 1,000 views, but I've really got 2 people that spend any time on this thing. Yeah, you don't have 1,000 views. You get 2 people that are
Right.
propping up. People don't understand. That's when people are looking to help you monetize, they want people that are engaged that they can advertise to and sell stuff to. And forget about the views, man. You can buy those.
So I had a band come on the label years ago. This
Yep.
is a few years back, probably 3 or 4 before I met you, long before I met you. And they were a really, really great band. Bunch of young guys, mid-20s, right? They had a really great sound, right? And I started building a profile for them.
Yep.
Okay. They hadn't launched any music anywhere. They chose to launch their music with me.
Yep.
Right. And we got their music out there. We started getting their music trending. Right. And somewhere along the line, the lead guy, the head guy for the band, the guy that did all the talking for the band, contacts me and says, and this is just over the internet. So it's a breakup over the internet. It's not even a conversation. Like
that's got to be a Taylor Swift song somewhere, isn't it?
I don't know. It's not even a conversation, right? And so what happens is, he said, "Well, we're going to leave the label because we got offered a better deal, right?"
Okay, cool.
And I'm like, "Well, that's great. That's great. But you didn't tell me that was coming. It would have been nice to know." And I got 0 credit from them, from lifting them out of obscurity
Yep.
to getting them in front of people and getting their music trending. That's probably the reason somebody like a label that could give them some tour support
Yeah.
was willing to pick them up.
So
because
wait
of that momentum.
wait till they get to the label and they find out. I just had a conversation with somebody the other day that their band could have gotten a major tour with a
Right.
major heavy hitting headliner
Right.
if they had $80,000 to pay for it.
Right.
And so it's like, oh well, if we had a label, we'd be able to get that. Well, do you think they give you that 80 grand and you never have to pay it back? And this, like, it's just people. You got to get the info, man. And like back to the analytics stuff again, Ken. I just, it's so funny because I look at certain things like the gender. I'm almost 50-50 now in terms of my audience. But here's the
Right.
one that floors me. Here's the one that floors me, and I don't want to sound like a jackass, but people say, "Well, how come you're doing certain content?" I said, "Well, I'm doing certain content now because I'm going to where the numbers go." For the first time ever in my top 3, Canada is number 3, sitting at 17%. The States is almost 40%. Southeast Asia makes up the rest at number 2. Right? Why that is,
Right.
I gotta dig into this. I don't know. But here's the big thing. Last week, not subscribed viewers, so viewers that didn't take the time to hit subscribe, were 97% of my viewership.
Yep.
They're now 89.2. So in a week, we made some headway in that.
Right.
And so that's digging into the numbers and trying to force them to do stuff is what works.
Yeah, and if you look at longer range stats and you can see the trending, right? So you've got about 3 months where you can look at basically a business quarter, right?
Yep.
So how I look at this is I look at how well are we trending in a business quarter, and everybody's business quarter is different in terms of the way I look at things, because when someone starts working with me, then I look at the first 3 months as our first quarter together.
Mhm.
Right? Now, first quarter is never very, very telling about what's really going to happen until you hit the second quarter, because that's when you start to hit your stride and you go, okay, now we've got some data here.
Yep.
some real-time data that we can look. Is there been a trend? Has there been an improvement over time since the beginning of this relationship? Is this relationship fruitful?
Yep.
Right. And so here's an example of this. So over a 3-month period, this artist who had no profile on Spotify before has gained 81 followers from zero.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Over a 3-month period.
Yep.
Right. Over that same 3-month period, they've had 110 saves and 12 playlist ads, and about 4,500 streams of the song in 3 months.
Those are solid numbers for somebody that started at nothing.
Yeah, they're not bad. I mean, they're not bad numbers. And the cool thing about that is that it's still continuing to trend upwards. If you break down those stats even further and you started looking out at the trend over that 3-month period, you can actually see a trend in growth.
Well, that's what you're looking for. And see, that's why everybody's strategy is typically just throw it out there, right?
But the trend is still upwards. So what I'm saying is you need to give it a second quarter to see if it keeps trending. Because if it's going to keep trending upwards, right, it's like buying stock at a very, very low price of 10 cents a penny stock.
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden, overnight, that stock goes from a penny a stock to $1 a stock.
Well, the thing is too that I like on YouTube, for example, like I like all their charts and graphs, and they can appear pretty brutal, but I look at my subscribers, and I had this flat line. It was like if I was in the OR getting ready to have a heart attack, I was dead. Then all of a sudden she spiked way up, and now it's flatlined again, but at a higher plateau. And when I look in that area where it spiked up, I know exactly why it did, because I ran some contests and what have you, right?
Well, here's an interesting thing that I've noticed, okay? So when I'm looking to dig into analytics that a label is interested in digging into versus what an artist might glean from it, right?
Yep.
This is where Spotify for Artists actually shines, okay? Because Spotify for Artists actually breaks down the stats in a way that a label would be interested in those statistics for the purposes of target marketing.
Yep.
Right. So as those stats start rolling in, it gives the label some insights about how to market towards that target market.
No question.
And so now you're starting to roll out those stats and you're starting to break that down into demographics. So here's an interesting thing. Okay. 62% male, 37% female listeners.
Ouch.
What's that?
Is it a prog rock band by any chance? Oh, did I say that? Okay.
No, it's interesting. It's not, which it just surprised me that there are more males that have identified with the song, and the song and the video are kind of synonymous, right?
It doesn't surprise me, and I'll tell you why.
Mm.
Because, like I say, like my gender split at one point was 60-40 or something like that. It was like, and when I looked at why, it was because a lot of the topics that were coming where people were saying, get this person, get that person, and they were all dudes. They were guitar players, and my thought was, oh well, you know what? This is a good-looking guy. The women will like it. It wasn't happening because women kind of want to see more issue-based things. They want to see more, And so when we started doing that, I saw the numbers shift. So it doesn't surprise me that that's their number.
And you got to remember, that's a first single, that's a first release by an artist that was sort of, I would consider to be somewhat obscure before this event, right?
Yep.
And then you start, but you look at how the demographics age-wise are broken down in this, in particular interest around this song, right? And interest starts to peak between the ages of 18 and 22. Okay,
that's interesting.
And then it it peaks even more. So it starts off around 5%, 18 to 22, and then 21% from age 23 to 27, 29%. It's the highest group where it resonated, age group 28 to 34. And then it goes down to 16% at 35 to 44, and then holds to about 19% until age 60. So what a great spread of demographics. Now here's some opportunity, because here's where I would look at it, because it's a message, right? The song is actually a message, and if people were paying attention to it, it's timely because of what's going on in the world today,
Right.
and so a great video presentation may be something that grabs more the attention of the Gen Zers and the millennials on Instagram, so that they would pay attention to the song, its lyrics, and its musical content.
Well, I mean, that could be one thing. I mean, the age thing fascinates me. It really does.
Yeah. But you look at that age spread, it's a really decent age spread, and people start, I mean, the biggest uptake of the music is ages 23 through 34, and then it kind of levels off a little bit between 16 and 19, and 9% from age 35 to 60 plus.
I don't know if you can see that.
I think it's backwards, but what's that?
That's my age stats on Barstools, and it's almost identical to what you're talking about with those guys.
So here's an interesting thing. I'm going to share something else with you. This is another artist on the label. And I'm not giving away any trade secrets here. All I'm really doing is just talking about analytics and throwing out some analytics and how we see these analytics and how we interpret them, how important it is in relation to helping you to market your music, but also getting you to really focus on this thing we're talking about and capitalizing on social media as it relates to your digital music sales. Right? So I'm going to go to a different artist here. Let me go through the artist list here. Where are they? Got to find it. Here we are. Okay. So this is a latest single by an artist, and it's definitely trending. Okay. And we're going to take a look at just a couple of the things that are really interesting. So go back to all time. So in the last 28 days, we had a single that was released, and I got to go over to my Spotify over here so I can look at the actual release date. And it is right here.
This is riveting TV.
It is riveting TV because it's very, very, very important. So this is a song that came out on December the 4th, 2023, right? So right near the end of the year, okay? Since that date, the song has garnered 18,890 streams.
Wow.
On Spotify alone.
Wow.
Okay. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So what do we know about this particular song? And we're going to break down some of that stuff. So over that same period of time, we're going to go over that same period of time. So the song was released December 5th or December 4th of 2023. Sean, if you think about release dates, you'll know exactly whose song this is.
I was going to go, uh-oh.
And if you don't, shame on you.
Yeah.
We've got 29 playlist ads since the song was released, 210 saves.
Wow.
So that means now that song is sitting in somebody's 210 different libraries right now. Now, anybody know, Sean, do you know how libraries get used in in the world of Spotify?
You know what, Ken? I think I do, but I'm not 100%. So why don't you tell me? And I'm not even being sarcastic.
Okay, so here's one of the ways that these can be used. They can be used to create playlists that you share, and you can open up your playlist to the public, and people can add songs to your playlist, right? And you can share playlists back and forth. So the cool thing about platforms like Spotify and why they were created, they're created to create file sharing, but where the owners of the files actually get paid for the use of those files. Right? So that was the idea of creating Spotify and iTunes and all those other places, so that the people that own the music could actually get paid from it. Right? And we're looking at changing that game every day, aren't we? So that
Always.
artists are better remunerated, right? I think that there is a way for artists to make money off their digital music, but it's all driven by multiple sales, or if you can get your followers to download your songs.
Yeah.
Right off our website. Right? It's $1 a download per song, right? Cheaper than a cup of coffee. Right?
We say this all the time, and it's funny, right? How many times you go out and drive by the the beer store and buy a 6-pack for $20?
That's right.
I did an exercise and saw the plastic caps. You sit there and you go, man, I spent $800 this year on beer. Versus
you don't own beer, you rent it.
Absolutely.
But the music is yours forever. Here's the cool thing about downloading our artist music. Our artist music is downloaded with an ISRC code attached to it.
Right.
Okay. So the cool thing about having an ISRC code attached to it, it's absolute proof that recording, that master recording, belongs to the artist. Right. So we're protecting the artist's interest off that. Now, here's a new thing that we're adding, which also becomes part of this whole trail through tech. Okay. And we're going to talk about the impact of tech on all this, because tech development drives all this stuff. Right?
Yep.
So now we're adding a new component called ISWCs. Right? And the ISWCs is an international code for the actual written work of the artist. Chat room's open if anybody's got any comments. I don't see anybody over there tonight. But if you got a comment, by all means, please feel free to add it. So you've got all this great data at your fingertips, but if you don't put it to some level of use and use it to and you got access to social media, right?
Yep.
You have access to platforms to get your music out there, and you've got a great opportunity to build an organic following of people who will share your posts.
Yes, and see, when we live in this world of instant gratification and instant celebrity, people overlook the organic factor. But there's a reason why, and I know some people that were on. We had Canadian Idol, right? You remember that?
Right.
I remember some people that were on it and did very well, and you never hear about them anymore. It's because they had instant gratification, but they didn't have that organic longevity piece. Some of them make comebacks, some of them don't. But I mean, look at Carly Rae Jepsen, who had one of the biggest songs in the last while. Saw her for the first time on a commercial, and I mean, where's she been? You know what I mean?
I'm almost at my limit of friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing is that I can make a post and I don't get one share. Not one share.
Yeah.
And it's I've got like 4,900 people who follow me or supposedly follow me, and when I make a post, I can't even get people to share. And I don't want to beg people or ask people to share. I think that begets the whole idea. The idea is to be a selfless act by sharing someone else's post, because even though it may not be directly relevant to you,
yeah,
it might be relevant to somebody else. And you know what? Even tag them in it. Share it and tag them in it. if you think it's relevant to them, because what it does, it helps that post to trend. And all you did was do a couple of clicks.
Yeah. The unfortunate part is, and this is what this guy that I talked about today talked about. Uh, it's a hard pill to swallow, but people don't want to see your success, right?
That's that tiny violin.
I think you need to tune it.
Oh man. Here's an interesting thing about tech. Uh, I was looking at this one article. It says tech fueled inequality could catalyze populism 2.0. What do you think about that?
I guess.
I mean, that's a bit mind blowing, right? To say that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it. We had a thing down here, which is really funny. So we used to have the Chronicle Herald, which was the big paper, and it turned into Saltwire. And what they did is they had a dispute in 2017 with their employees. It was a long, drawn out thing. They settled, and then they went out and they bought 28 newspapers. Well, it was just announced yesterday, the day before, that they're under creditor protection now, $94 million in debt, and everybody's clamoring about, oh, we're going to lose media. We're going to lose media. Possibly, but what you said there to me is I'd be in the whole thing of that doesn't grab me as anything. You know what I mean? I get what you're saying, but and that I think people miss stuff like that because it's just too grandiose for them.
So listen to this one. This is really interesting. What they have to say at the opening part of the article. This is what kind of grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
Geopolitical crises, looming climate chaos, and the relentless expansion of surveillance capitalism are driving the development of the technologies of tomorrow. Artificial intelligence, semiconductors, green energy, big data, advanced robotics, virtual and augmented reality, nanotechnology, quantum computing, the Internet of Things, and more. Like, holy crap. I mean, tech is growing that much, right? That here's the thing that we all need. We all need to have high speed, high fiber internet.
Yeah.
If we really want to stay connected properly in this world. And if nothing else, and it would create so much freedom in the world for people to make their own informed decisions, where it should lie with the individual about making good informed decisions, right? Based on being able to have access to the right information, right?
Yeah, I mean, but then again, I mean, that's a wider conversation that probably shouldn't be dabbled here. I mean, what's the right information, and who's the assigner of the right information?
But that's the whole thing, is that the internet was birthed with the idea that no one should control the flow of information on the internet. That it was a free exchange of thoughts and information.
But it's happening. You saw it today. The states is trying to pass a bill to basically outlaw TikTok in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, nothing should be really censored. I think people have to use some really good judgment around these things, because one of the biggest concerns is that high tech can be used to gather intelligence information.
Well, but that's the yabbits. That's been going on before there were computers. I mean, like people ratting their neighbors out, and in the Second World War to get, it's never going to go away, right?
Big Brother is everywhere.
Absolutely. And I mean, George Orwell. I mean, the guy, everything that he had. I mean, maybe it wasn't 1984, but I mean, it's a million times worse now.
I just think it's really interesting how tech is driving things, and I think that one of the things that, if people want to have this free exchange of information and free flow of information, and things like music and stuff like that, that provides some levels of entertainment for them, then the one thing that would be wonderful to connect the world would be fiber optic for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's still places here in Nova Scotia where people are trying to do things on the internet, be it, pay their bills to doing live streams, and they can't because there's areas here that are still on dial-up.
Yeah, I'm still on the old cable system here, and my internet I'm supposed to have a gig up and a gig down.
Yep.
That's not been happening for months, and they detected a problem over here. Some guy was supposed to come fix it. Haven't seen anybody to fix it yet,
Yep.
right? And we got a new company in town that came by and said, "We will install your fiber into your house for you for free." And you don't even have to sign up with us month by month, $50 a month, unlimited uploads and downloads, 1 gig up, 1 gig down, fiber optic.
Well, I mean,
for a
so
house that streams everything, we stream everything here. We don't have cable anymore. We don't watch cable TV.
yep. And I mean, that's going by the way of the dodo. I mean, we saw it here. Like it was ATV, Atlantic Television, but it's CTV, and they just chopped a bunch of stuff down here, right?
I got to put a plug in for this show because I love the show, and I would love to try and get this guy on our show. If you haven't watched the show called Blacklist on Netflix,
Mhm.
it is James Spader is outstanding in this.
Yeah.
And it's got like 10 seasons, right? So you know that if Netflix keeps something like that for 10 seasons, it's really good. We're halfway through the 10 seasons right now.
Yeah.
And every episode just gets better and better. And his one-liners and his dry sense of humor and his dark sense of humor in the character that he plays, man, it's amazing.
Well, that's great, but you're gonna have a hard time convincing me to stop watching this, my friend.
What's that?
The Sopranos.
Oh, that's a fave of mine as well.
What would Paulie do? What would Paulie do? Ask yourself that every time somebody.
What would Paulie do?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. That was an interesting show. My son and I watch periodically. Will watch episodes of it, but you got to check out Blacklist, man. If you haven't, it's an amazing show, and I don't want to give anything away. Just watch the first episode. If you're not sucked into it, then it's not for you. But man, I got sucked in on the first episode. It was like, whoa, this is really good. I mean, if you're making your first episode, it better be good.
Sure. If you want to have a fun episode of this show, we could regale the shows that I've never watched in my lifetime, and that would I've never seen an episode of Breaking Bad.
Oh, you never seen an episode of Breaking Bad? Oh man,
never watched an episode of Sons of Anarchy.
Never
watched. Hey, there's more. Never watched an episode of The Big Bang Theory. I mean, these people are like right now. What? You're kidding me? You're an idiot.
Yeah, I know. Young Sheldon is supposed to be really good. I was never really into Big Bang Theory, but you know what? My son loves it. Right?
Yeah.
He's you know what? And I really think that Big Bang changed its whole branding to pull in, because my son would be considered a millennial.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they've got that whole, say 20 to 27, 28 age group watching that show now. It's got a whole new generation of watchers.
Well, I was super excited to hear there's going to be a Baywatch reboot, so we'll see where that goes.
a Baywatch reboot. Oh my God, that's going to be interesting.
Well, I think Hollywood's officially out of ideas because it just seems they just seem to be regurgitating. So if there's a bit now is the time for Helix to redo No Rest for the Wicked, re-record it. No, we wouldn't want to re-record it, but re-release it, because I mean it's just like the world is out of ideas because there's no good ones anymore. All the good ones have been taken and done.
Well, I really like looking at the uptake when I see uptake of artist music, and I start looking at audiences. This particular artist, like I said, that has to date 18,000 plus streams. We've had a whole bunch of playlist ads. I'm just going to give you a quick breakdown on the demographics. So we got a different split here. Interesting enough. What do you think the greatest percentage of listeners are, male or female?
I would say I would say male slightly.
Okay. How much slightly would you say?
If it's the artist I'm thinking of, it's probably like 52 to 48
You're
male versus.
it could be a little bit. It's more than that. It's actually 65% male,
Okay.
30% female.
Okay.
And
That's interesting.
you know why that is? She's
Uh,
got a sultry voice, man.
well, yeah. Well, so the thing is though, and I know what we're talking about that particular song. It's a song that basically resonates with people in a certain age group that are like in a point in their life where, you know what, I wish I kind of took more time when I was a kid to figure out that, you know what, have fun and whatever. And now here you are paying bills and whatnot, and life doesn't suck, but it's not as fun as you thought it was going to be. And I get why, that resonates with men. And you know let's face it, a lot of men are sitting there going like, man, I'm out of shape, I lost my hair, like, things aren't going well for me. And then they
Right.
hear that song and they get excited about life.
Here's an interesting thing. I remember having a conversation with my grandmother who died well into her 90s. And of course, I just lost my dad not long ago. He would have been 97 this year.
Hmm.
And one thing I talked to both my grandmother, which was my dad's mother, who lived well into her 90s as well. And we had this conversation a few times. And I said to my dad, I said, what do you have any real regrets at the end of your life?
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you regret the career choice you made? Do you regret anything in your life? He said, no, I think my life turned out pretty good. He said, I got bonus years. He said, I had pancreatic cancer when I was 60. I should have died then.
A great way to look at it.
Yeah. So he looked at every day from, when he got his pancreatic, his new lease on life after pancreatic cancer. Who lives after that? Much less lives almost 36 years.
Yeah. And it's we talk about The Sopranos, and Tony had this great line, and it was when him and Paulie were on the lam in Miami, and Paulie's telling war stories, and Tony says, remember when's the lowest form of conversation. But I think
Right.
people don't do that enough, because you're always, I could be accused of that, man. You don't look at all the work that you've done and go, that's pretty good. You're always looking at the next biscuit.
Yeah.
So
We went down a few rabbit holes tonight. Coming back to those analytics, going to break it down a little bit further. Okay, so here's another interesting breakdown. The trend starts really at age 18 to 22 with 13% of that
Wow.
in the listening audience, right?
Well,
And then it starts to peak from age 23 all the way to age 34. It stays at a steady 24%.
wow.
Biggest demographic, man. And then from 35 to 60 years of age, we've got a mean average of about 16%.
So that doesn't surprise me, and I'll tell you why.
Hmm.
When we play locally in town, obviously we're talking about Michelle, and
Yeah.
when we play locally in town, we'll get up on stage, and the first thing is they see a woman, and they're like, "Okay, what's going on here?" And then she starts to sing, without a doubt, every time. You get these little girls they go up to the front of the stage. They're not used to seeing a woman, but they're not used to seeing a woman who can sing. She makes instant fans every time we play in downtown Halifax, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
So here's an interesting thing. This is the last 28 days worldwide. Okay.
Yeah.
What country do you think the greatest number of listeners come from in the last 28 days?
Australia.
Nope. Philippines. Philippines.
Wow.
765 listeners.
That's incredible.
Okay. What country do you think comes in number 2?
I'd say like Europe somewhere, the UK or Germany or
The good old US of A at
Wow.
502 listeners.
I can probably explain that one a little bit, but yeah, that's interesting.
So here's an interesting thing. I'm scrolling down the list of countries, right?
Yep,
Where
yep.
the song's been listened to, right? And I'm having a hard time finding Canada.
And I'm not surprised at all. You know why I'm not surprised? Because I've been doing this 4 years, and I can even break stuff down when I'm looking at like how many are coming from my own. There's a saying, you got to make it elsewhere before you make it in your own backyard. Doesn't surprise
I
me.
I bet we could do a sellout show in the Philippines.
Wouldn't that be something, man? Let's start looking at it.
I bet we could
I'm
do it.
in.
I bet we could do a sellout show in the Philippines. 765 listeners from the Philippines, and at the highest number of listeners the last 28 days on this single. And what we're seeing is a whole lot of engagement, right?
Yeah,
So
there's different triggers. I mean, one of the things that we did with the first song is we made sure that we collected email addresses, and we were make sure that we're constantly contacting people when new stuff is
right.
happening. And so, it's yeah, I mean, it slightly surprises me in some stuff and not so much in the others. Can you send me those stats, by the way?
Oh, we're gonna go over them. Like
Well,
that's
but I'm
one of
not going to
that-
remember them.
that's why I'm gonna have an online business meeting with you guys and go over your stats with you.
Yeah. But in the
Uh,
meantime, please send those to me.
Well, there's so many different ones to screenshot, and I can only do them by screenshot. It won't let me save them as PDFs. So
Well, just
I
give
can
me.
send you. I'll send you a few screenshots so you can drool over them.
That's cool. Well, no, I mean, and again, because here's the thing, Ken. You're sitting there and you're doing stuff, and you're going like, "Is it working?" You don't know, and this
But
is
it's
why.
trending. I know it's trending. And the cool thing about it is that the song is continuing to trend. I'm seeing an upward trajectory. And so from the first release, right? And that song was more of a soft release because it had already been previously released.
Yep.
So there were some things that we couldn't do with it, some bells and whistles we couldn't put on it. One of the things we couldn't put on it was I lost out on some opportunities to do playlist pitching.
Yep.
Because for the editorial playlists, they're only interested in new releases, not a re-release. And the only way we could have treated it as a re-release would been to pull it down, leave it down for like a month, and then start fresh. But the song had already had some momentum, so what we decided to do was publish alongside it, if you recall.
Yep.
Right. But the interesting thing about that is that from the very first single, when you look at the single itself and the actual release, it was released February of 2022, right? And then the second song doesn't come out until December of 2023, right? So we've got a long break between those two releases.
Yep.
And yet we got more engagement on the second follow-up release, which told me something. What do you think those analytics told me?
I'm not exactly sure. I can tell you what they tell me, but
Okay.
You tell me what they tell you.
Tells me that first single got people's attention.
Yeah.
Now, we maybe didn't get the watches, but don't get hung up on the watches.
Exactly.
Get hung up on the engagement. If I'm right, those 1,000 streams, so it's more than 1,000. It's 1,784 streams, and that's just on Spotify.
Yeah.
So if you were to even be generous and double that on iTunes, that first song has got about, between all the platforms, probably about 4,000 streams on different platforms. So, but what it tells me is that an organic audience became engaged. And they were waiting for that second release.
I'd agree with that, and I'll tell you, it's another conversation. It was almost a song that never came to be, because the first time I heard it, I wanted to poke myself in the eyes. It was just like there was a reason for that, and I won't go into it. But it again, it's good. It's good to see those numbers, because it's good to know when you're working the way that you talk about and people talk about, that results can come out of it.
And we're going to talk about that more in future shows. We're coming up the top of the hour, so we're going to have to cut it off there tonight. But we're going to talk about so much more networking and stuff like that as the conversation will continue. We got a couple of shows coming up. We got next week on the show, we've got Jason Dozer,
Right.
who is the front man for a Def Leppard and Van Halen tribute. And they do a lot of back-to-back shows together, which is really kind of cool. And they play a lot down in the Florida area, but they play all over the southern U.S. And Jason also owns a company that makes, or he makes, custom makes microphone stands for some of the greats.
So cool. So cool.
So what a cool thing. And he's by trade, I believe he's a metalsmith or a fabricator of some sort. So we'll find out more about that, his backstory there next week. And I just received word tentatively that Lorraine Lewis is going to join us on the 27th of the month, because she's got some new music out there.
Can I have just I never do this, but a personal little plug. Plug. So went up. I did the interview night before last. It went up today. Bobby Jean Brown, who's the girl from the Cherry Pie video, who, if you go on Lorraine's socials, Lorraine did a tribute to her on there last week. Right. I interviewed her, and she had kind of disappeared from the internet, and then came out and was talking, God and religion and all that stuff. And I interviewed her, and the first question was, why have you been away? And I encourage anybody to go to Barstools and Band Talk. The first 10 minutes of that interview will absolutely blow your mind. I was just like, I didn't even think I was going to get the answers that I got.
Well, here's an interesting thing. So we talk about organic growth across the internet, and I was talking a little bit before about my daughter's involvement in doing social media and doing Instagram with Lorraine, right?
Yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. As a result of that, some of her work has shown up on the Vixen
and it will
profile because they've posted it on their profile purposely. And as a result of that, she has some heavy hitters in the music industry following her now.
That's the way it works. Well, I'll tell you really quickly. I was on a post with there's this drum thing that's going on in Boston, and Rick Allen from Def Leppard and his wife are doing the show. And I went on and I commented and said, hey, if I was in the area, I'd do it. He liked it, and within 10 minutes, the keyboard player for Bon Jovi liked it and actually sent me a friend request. Now I'm trying to find out if that's legitimate or not, but that's the way it works.
Well, Lorraine had to restart her Instagram page.
Yep.
And she enlisted the help of my daughter, and to date, I think it's well over 10,000 followers now since my daughter started helping her with the Instagram account. And I'm not saying that is all Nicole's doing, but I know Lorraine sings her praises all the time.
Well, sure. And I mean, the whole, and I mean, I've never met Nicole, but obviously she's a bright girl, but it's also proof that do something and good things can happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't stagnate. And that's the message for you folks. So stay tuned for next week. Jason Dozer will be with us. And as always, my co-host with the most from the East Coast, Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Band Talk, Rim Shots with Sean. Check it out on YouTube. It's a great show. He does some great interviews on there. He's got some heavy hitters on there. Some people we want to have on this show.
Well, and we're coming up to 500. I've got 500 booked. We're probably by next week we'll have hit our 500th interview.
I'm still waiting to hear on two people that I've been dogging you for a while.
So am I.
Tommy, we need you, buddy. Tommy London.
He said he'd do it. I can show you. I'd show everybody the text. He said he'd do it. He said, I got to figure out my schedule.
Tommy let it, and we want to have Pat Roach on the show. Randy from the Trailer Park.
I'll tell you what. I'll send him another text. If he doesn't respond, I'll walk over to his house and knock on the door because I graduated with Pat. I want to have him on a show. I was wondering if he'd agree to do this show without his shirt on. Well, the thing is, Pat gets in some shape when they're not shooting, man. He gets in some shape when they're not shooting. But I would like to see him without his shirt on. Okay, that's kind of sounding a little weird, but but that's the only way you get to see Randy without his shirt on, right? He never had his shirt on in the show, does he? No, but here's the thing I'll tell you about Pat. Pat, he's a super nice guy. He's like, all those guys are really down to earth, and they get bugged so much around here. It's I bet they do. but they're very gracious, and Pat in particular is like, I went over to his house one day to give him something that I can't remember what it was, but he wanted a T-shirt of our band, so I've got a picture, I'll post it. But anyway, he's like, yeah, I haven't left this friggin' house in 3 weeks because I've been so busy shooting this thing. I don't want to go anywhere. And I mean, that's what they
Right.
do. Their privacy is pretty tough, right?
Yeah, I'm after a few publicists on my end to get a couple of guests on the show, but it's tough to get some people on. I mean, but you've had some great people, like Billy Sheehan's been on your show.
Yeah, I've had Billy Sheehan, I've had Liberty DeVito, I've had Todd Zuckerman, Joey Allen recently from Warrant. I had this really cool guy. The band's called Diet. They're a thrash metal band. I had him on. Gilherme is his name. Gilherme Miranda. He's a guitar player. Plays with Dave Ellefson, who used to be in Megadeth, is in the band.
Right.
And yeah, anyway, just all kinds of cool people.
I saw a live video of him today.
Who?
Billy Sheehan.
Oh yeah, he's insane.
And he's doing like an insane sort of lead thing on his bass guitar, playing along with the lead guitar player. It's just freaking amazing. And I'd love to have him on the show if we could ever get him, because he'd be an interesting guest for
I
sure.
can ask him. He was super cool. He was very nice. I mean, what's cool for me is, I had Leland Sklar that played with Phil Collins, and
Right.
the guy from, they're doing the whole tour now with their thing. But Billy, not only Billy, but all these guys that I've met, I grew up listening to, and it's just like, they're just down to earth people that just happen to have some success.
Right.
I've had more trouble with people in my backyard than I have these heavy hitters from out in the
Well,
the world, right?
I'm not giving up. My goal. I'd love to get Geddy Lee on the show. He's a Canadian boy, the same as us, and he bleeds the same color as us.
Yep.
And I'd love to have him on the show, because I'd like to talk about his book, My Effing Life. My kids gave it to me for Christmas.
Yep.
And I've seen some of the excerpts from the talks that he does about the book with Alex Lifeson, and it looks freaking inviting and hilarious at the same point in time.
Yeah, and he would be great. There's a ton of them, and like I say, most of them are very accessible. You just have to be professional when you ask the question.
Well, listen, it's been great having you with me this week. We'll see everybody next week. Until then, Sean McKenna, and I am Kenny, and you are not. This has been the Indie Show. There's a tip jar above Sean's finger there. There we go. You can always tip us if you like us. And we'll see you next week, everybody. Until then.